We recently took a client from having their worst month ever to pacing over $500,000 a month cash in under 2.5 weeks. And in today's video, I'm going to share exactly what we did to make that happen and how you can implement these precise steps inside of your high ticket info business. If you're new to the YouTube channel, welcome. My name is Sebastian Robeck. If you don't know much about me, I exited my high ticket coaching business back in 2021. I then went on to work as the CMO for multiple eight-figure info brands like Cole Gordon and Closers.io, Traffic and Funnels, and several others, including running the marketing for a multi-eight-figure a year regenerative medicine company. And at this point, I've built and managed multiple eight-figure marketing teams, as well as managing well over $50 million in ad spend across Facebook and YouTube. And current day, my team and I here at 7FM are scaling a small handful of high-ticket info businesses up to high six and even seven figures a month. And we're doing it without the founders losing their minds. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So for context, this client has a $12,000 offer in the real estate investing coaching space. On the sales team, they've got 3 setters and 3 closers, and we've been spending roughly $2,000 a day on YouTube ads alone. We're not doing any Facebook at the moment. And the problem that we ran into here was we saw both our lead and call volume and the quality of our leads and calls both drop simultaneously, and you gotta love when that happens. And you know, as experienced and seasoned as we are here at marketing and advertising, these things happen, and it's not about never having problems. It's about how you course correct and adjust when they do come up. And the one interesting note I want to make here about this video and about the action steps I'm about to share with you is this particular instance of us turning this client's performance around was one of the definitely less frequent instances where the big changes that we made weren't actually on the offer or the messaging or anything to do with the funnel. It was almost exclusively on the media buying. And again, this isn't what we often see. This isn't necessarily the norm, because typically any big changes that we make that are going to yield large amounts of results for clients usually are on the offer side, how things are being positioned, what we're saying in the ads, who we're speaking to, that sort of thing. But again, in this case, it was almost exclusively the media buying. And this does happen from time to time where you can make huge leaps just through restructuring the ad account, especially on YouTube, because there's a lot more variables and things you can play with on the YouTube side than on Facebook. So the first thing we did to turn this client around was what I call an audience test blitz. So the problem that we were running into is the existing audiences that we were running traffic to on YouTube were just getting saturated, expensive. We were seeing the cost consistently rise. And again, these were audiences that we were using for quite some time. So what we did is we overhauled our entire audience rotation with fresh audience segments on the YouTube ad side. And we compiled a variety of new audiences using our best creatives. And this is key. So we didn't test new audiences and new creatives both at the same time, because then we have no idea what's working and what's actually driving the results. So we kept the creatives constant, and we really narrowed it down to our top 2 to 3 absolute best performers of all time, and introduced a new rotation of audiences. So the types of audiences that we tested in this sort of blitz, if you will, and these, by the way, are the types of audiences that we consistently find to absolutely crush when it comes to YouTube traffic. So we had things like custom intent audiences that we had never tested. So we were running some custom intent audiences inside of our campaigns, but we just tried, again, we literally sat there with our media buying team for like 90 minutes and went, okay, what pockets of the market are we not hitting? And we created audiences around those pockets. So we just came up with different, unique, fresh ideas for these custom intent audiences. We also tried different custom search segments with fresh phrases, fresh terms that we hadn't used. So on YouTube, you have custom intent audiences. They used to be called custom affinity. And then you've also got custom search segments, which are literally, inside of YouTube, you put in, okay, people are searching for these terms on Google, and you create an audience of people similar to the people searching for those terms. And you do get slightly different pockets. Use a custom intent versus a custom search. And we've seen both work well, so we were not biased towards using one or the other. Next, we tested some URL affinity audiences, and these are by far some of our top performing audiences on YouTube for our clients. And the way these work are very simple. So inside of the YouTube Audience Manager, you can insert either one or several URLs and tell Google, hey, create me an audience of people similar to the people who visit these types of websites. And what we did, and what works just literally 10 times out of 10 for our clients when we do this, is we used URLs from our competitor websites, so that both their home websites and their funnels. We used URLs of websites that we just know our market visits, whether it's publications or specific products they buy, or maybe it's other YouTube channels we know they're following and watching content from. We put those URLs into these multiple audiences, and they just absolutely crush, like I said. Then the last audience type that we tested, which also worked incredibly well, was what we call app affinity audiences. So these are very similar to the URL affinity audiences in that you're inserting something and telling YouTube and Google, hey, make me an audience of people similar to this particular action. And in this case, you're telling them, hey, make an audience of people similar to those who use these specific apps. So for example, if you're running some sort of a financial, make money, investing kind of offer, you can say, hey, find me audiences of people who use Robinhood, who use certain stock investing apps, or for example, My Forex, I think it's called. I forget the name. There's a particular the main Forex app exchange that you download. So that's a really good one that we've used for several clients as well. And these app affinity audiences are just, again, they crush. And the strategy that we implemented here was we launched what we call a sort of buffet spread of these new audiences, and we pushed our absolute top 1 to 2 creatives to these new market segments. And we cut losers very, very quickly to consolidate the spend and focus on the winners. And this was one of the biggest needle movers for us in turning this client's performance around. Let's move on to step 2, which is creative consolidation. So I've already hinted at this a bit, but the key here that we did, and the lesson in what I'm about to share is, I remember when I was working as a CMO for Cole Gordon, he explained this to me very early on, and it blew my mind. You know, this is like 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, look, man, the first people to get bored of your advertising is going to be you. And the first person to get bored of your ads, your marketing, everything you're putting out into the marketplace is going to be you, not the market. And that really hit me. And it's so true. And we found that to be true with all of our clients. And the lesson here is that, yes, always be testing new creatives, but sometimes, and it's all contextual, sometimes you don't always necessarily need brand new ads. You just need to show those existing ads to a different pocket of traffic and audience. And so what we did here is we trimmed our creative sort of rotation, if you will, down to just our top 2 performers. We put 100% of our spend behind ads that we knew converted. So we stopped testing a bunch of new things and all these different angles and stuff. We just put all of our spend into the ads that we knew absolutely crushed for us and cut the rest. And then we made, again, the audiences the only variable that we tested here. And like I said, the reason why this worked and why this often works so well for our clients is, again, sometimes you don't need new ads. You just need to put your best ad or best ads in front of new people. And this also works because it eliminated creative variable confusion, as I mentioned earlier. So instead of us testing new audiences and new creatives and then us having zero idea what's actually driving the results, we eliminated that possibility by keeping the creatives the same, as in just our top 2 performers, and testing new audiences. And this step here was one of the biggest reasons we were able to turn our clients' performance around. Now let's move into step 3, which is what I call multiple event optimization. Again, this stuff is very tactical. It's very in the weeds. But I promise if you're still running your ads as a founder, or if you give this to your marketing team, I promise you're going to see a significant uptick in the results you get from your YouTube traffic. This obviously doesn't apply to Facebook because this is totally different stuff. So the problem that I've seen after managing multiple tens of millions in spend on YouTube alone, I'm not even talking about Facebook, is most businesses and most people that are running YouTube ads, they will optimize their YouTube ad campaigns all around the same event, whether it's just optimizing for lead or just optimizing for a booked call. But the thing with YouTube is you have multiple conversion events that you could possibly optimize for. You got page view, purchase, sign up, book appointment. And within each of these events, you've also got multiple attribution timeframes that you can optimize for. And ultimately, these different events and these different optimization timeframes influence your lead and your call quality very, very differently. So what we did was we implemented a mixed optimization strategy, meaning we tested our top performing campaigns, our top performing audiences and creatives. And instead of optimizing for the same event we've normally optimized for, we tested optimizing some campaigns only for leads, some only for calls, some only for applications. And then on Google, you can also test for conversion action sets. So you can combine, say, your lead and your call, or your lead in your app, or your app and your call. So we tested some campaigns doing lead and call, or lead and app. And then the last step here was we also tested some Hyros specific conversion events. So in Google, same thing with Facebook, you can feed back Hyros offline conversion events to your ads. You can create specific audiences based off of that, and you can also create custom events based off of that data. And so after we had enough data built up, which, we did that in the very beginning. So fortunately we had plenty of data by the time, the shit hit the fan. So we were prepared. So then we were able to test optimizing only for the Hyros call event, and then also only for the standard Google call event. So again, these two sets of conversion events might sound very similar, and they are, but you're ultimately going to get different results because the data is slightly different. And after implementing this mixed optimization strategy, we saw an almost immediate drop in our front-end costs and an immediate spike and an increase in our call quality. So that was another huge component of our success here. Step 4 is what I call daily aggressive testing. So after we implemented steps 1 through 3, we had a much stronger foundation and a baseline of different conversion events, new audience pockets that we were testing, creative consolidation, so we were only pushing spend to 1 or 2 ads. We then implemented this aggressive daily testing approach. And the way this worked was we took 10 to 15% of our total daily budget every single day, and we would choose one new variable to test, whether that is a new audience, a new creative that we hadn't tested yet, or a new optimization event. And then we would push all of that 10 to 15% of total daily budget into that one new testing campaign. And we would specifically use the max conversions bidding strategy. So we weren't doing target CPA, because we wanted to get data very, very quickly and just let Google spend the budget and not put any chokeholds on it. We would let that new campaign run for between 24 to 36 hours. And if it was not within KPI, or if it was not even close to being within KPI, we would just kill it, no questions asked. Now, if it was creeping up to being close within KPI, we would let it run for a little bit longer. And of course, we had specific KPIs that we knew were what we needed to hit for this client. So you have to have those, of course, in order to make these types of decisions. And then lastly, once we would kill that campaign, we would relaunch the testing budget into a new campaign, testing a different variable. Again, a new creative, a new audience, or a new optimization. And the reason this worked incredibly well was after we had a new baseline from following steps 1 through 3, it then meant that we were always testing something new, which dramatically increased our chances of finding new winners to scale. So whether it was a new ad, again, a new audience, whatever the case may be, it just meant that we had a little bit more flexibility and variety in our overall sort of portfolio of campaigns, if you will, and meant that our overall ROAS was protected in case our baseline campaigns, if 1 or 2 of them started to fall off in terms of performance. And this particular strategy was responsible for some of our best performing creative and audience combos, because when you're aggressively testing like this on a daily basis, it is literally inevitable that you're going to find some new winners. And when you do, because of how stable YouTube is as a platform, and I'm going to talk a lot more about this in other videos as far as scaling YouTube traffic for high ticket info offers, but because of the stability that YouTube holds at scale, you can take a campaign from being at $200-$300 a day, and you can 2 to 3x that budget every single day for a week. And in our experience, we've seen those campaigns hold their performance and sometimes even improve their performance as you scale, probably 80 to 85% of the time. And ultimately, this allowed us to perform week over week optimization. So we were always breaking things, testing new stuff, and scaling those winners. So let's move on to step number 5, which is arguably one of the most important parts of us improving the performance for this client and getting them back on a $500K a month run rate in less than 2.5 weeks. And that was tracking setter calls. So the hidden problem here is that, and this is what we found with almost every single client that we end up working with, is that most people that are running call funnels specifically are only tracking their direct funnel bookings. So they're tracking, someone that goes ad to the landing page, fills out an application, self-books onto the calendar, and then hits the confirmation page. Those are the only calls that most businesses are tracking. But here's the issue. Most people that are coming through your funnel are not going to watch your VSL for more than maybe 10 to 15% of the total length. And in our experience, and this is what we saw with Cole Gordon, this is what I saw at that 8-figure regenerative medicine company. And again, this is what we see with probably 80 to 90% of our clients, is that a majority of production when it comes to new calls on the closer's calendar and ultimately new deals comes from setters, not direct inbound bookings, because show rates on those inbound bookings tend to be significantly lower, and as a result, close rates as well. Whereas calls that come from setters are always higher quality. They show up at a higher rate. They're just better overall. And that's why, again, often what we see is 70 to sometimes even 80+% of total production on the sales side comes from outbound setters hitting up the leads that we get from ads, not the inbound direct bookings, just booking themselves and then closing. And so what was happening was we were missing a massive amount of data and visibility by not tracking setter calls. And again, the reason why setter calls matter is because oftentimes, I'd say probably 90 to maybe even 100% of the time, really, they're higher quality, higher intent. They show up at higher rates and they close at higher rates. So what we implemented for this client was we started tracking set calls in addition to the direct inbound bookings. And then the real secret sauce here, and what really was the moneymaker for us, was we then started optimizing our ad spend in our campaigns around setter calls. So imagine that for a second. If you're running a call funnel right now, maybe you're doing, $200-300 grand a month, you're spending 50, 60, 70 grand a month on ads, let's say. Imagine if instead of optimizing for these very flaky inbound bookings who watch very little amounts of your content, don't know who you are, aren't showing up. Imagine if instead of optimizing around those people, you optimize around the calls that your setters put on the calendar, and you tell the ad platforms and your pixel, hey, find me more of those people. Just imagine the results you're going to get. Well, that's exactly what happened for this client. So we stopped optimizing around only direct bookings that had, a 30 to maybe 40% show rate. And again, we started optimizing around these set results from doing this, where we saw our cost per booked call dropping 10 to 15% week over week. Yes, that is how much of a difference it makes, especially at scale. If you're spending, $2,000 to $5,000 a day plus, when you make these sorts of pivots, they have a huge ripple effect at this level. We also saw our quality and our close rates continuously improving week over week, because again, we were telling the app platforms, hey, find me more of those really high quality, high intent, and high show up rate kinds of people. And so the sales team was honestly, ecstatic, especially with how quickly we saw the shift in quality take place. And ultimately, this last step here was really one of the game changers for our overall paid media performance. What I wanted now to wrap this video up is just zoom out here and share the compound effect of when you do all of these things I've mentioned in this video. So when you have all these working together, so you have fresh audiences plus your proven creatives, right? So you get initial improvements in your performance. Then we tested the multiple optimization events. So the algorithm on YouTube was starting to find better and better prospects because we were testing lower down the funnel and higher quality events. And then number 3 was daily aggressive testing, as I said. So we saw continuous improvement, and we continued to find new winners that allowed us to diversify our overall campaign portfolio and continue to scale. And again, lastly was the setter call tracking. So we were optimizing for what actually benefits the and the business, not just what looks good on paper, because getting a really low cost per booked call is great on paper. It's a great vanity metric for marketers to get all excited. But the reality is a low cost per booked call doesn't always equate to profitability and high ROAS for the company as a whole. So instead of us focusing on what most marketers do, it's like, okay, what's actually going to benefit the sales team the most and allow them to close the highest amount of deals at the lowest CPA possible. And that's what this helped us do. And each step here amplified the other, which is why it's so important that you do all of these if you're looking to turn your performance around with your YouTube ads, not just 1 or 2 of them. And the timeline that we took here was, again, I sort of alluded to this earlier, but we first started in week 1 by implementing steps 1 through 3, which is the creative consolidation, the audience blitz, and the multiple event optimization. And those were what allowed us to see an immediate improvement in performance across the board. In week 2, we added in the daily aggressive testing and the setter call tracking. And then by week 2.5, so midway through week 2, we were back on pace for hitting $500,000 that month in cash collected. Now, what I want to briefly touch on here are some of the things that people will get wrong when they try and do this. So number 1, again, testing too many variables at once. Don't test new creatives and new audiences and new conversion events all at the same time. You don't want to optimize for vanity metrics. As I said, you want to instead optimize for the business outcomes that are going to drive profitability. Number three, not tracking the full customer journey. So neglecting the setter calls and only looking at the very, very front end, which is really a small piece of the entire ecosystem. Do not give up on your good ads too early. Do not fall into the very, very easy to fall into trap of going, our ads just suck. Yeah, we need totally new creatives. It's like, not necessarily on Facebook. That is more often the case because ads tend to die out and fatigue a lot sooner on Facebook. But on YouTube, it's not always the case. And remember that you will get bored of your marketing and your ads a lot sooner than your market will. And lastly, number five is you need to have a systematic approach to this testing process. If you're just spraying and praying and throwing stuff against the wall, it's very, very low likelihood that even if you try and do some of these things, that they're going to work very well. So you need to do them in a systematic order and have a process. And that's what we have here internally for all of our clients. So I hope you found this video helpful. This was a lot more of a tactical in the weeds one. Again, if you are the founder of a high ticket info business and you're stuck at a couple $100,000 a month and you're not quite sure what the reason is for that and what your bottlenecks are and how to break past them, then I would highly recommend that you pick up the $1 Million a Month KPI dashboard. It's in the description. It's completely free. It is the exact tool that we use internally for all of our clients that allows us to not only get a clear snapshot of where our current marketing and sales performance lies at the moment, but you're also going to get a growth modeling tool that's going to allow you to model out and sort of simulate the growth required in your business and what your numbers need to look like in order to hit your desired revenue target. So again, hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you in the next one.